Hi there. So, one of the most common questions I've gotten so far in my relatively short prop building career is how to wrap Worbla on pink insulation or XPS foam without melting the foam underneath. So, if you've worked with Worbla in the past, you've probably wrapped it onto craft foam or EVA and not really had that problem because it's both of those foam types are pretty receptive to heat. But if you've used insulation foam at all, this pink stuff here, pretty much if you apply your heat gun to it for any amount of time at all, it just completely disintegrates. So my Ryoko scissor blade is all pink insulation foam wrapped in regular Worbla and then smoothed a lot. And then my Zarya cannon is pink insulation foam and EVA, depending on the specific parts. So for the areas that are a little more sensitive to needing to be messed with a lot, basically if you think you'd be applying your heat gun a lot to it after the actual wrapping had occurred, so like this area in here, some of these smaller pieces, these details around the core are all EVA. But the larger chunk areas, pretty much all of these pieces, these large chunks, especially this large chunk, are all pink because because the benefit of working with pink insulation for that is it's very easy to carve down, and you don't have to go through the trouble of, especially for that back power pack hilt piece, you don't have to go through as much trouble of putting, say, I don't know, 9 pieces of EVA sheets together. XPS foam comes in variant widths, so I think that that power pack was 3 of the larger size of foam put together with Super 77, and then just put together, let it dry, and then just carving and then hand sanding down. So there are definitely benefits being able to pick and choose which kind of foam to use as your base if you're going to be wrapping either your prop or your armor in Worbla. So the things you'll need, tool-wise, material-wise, to do this is obviously going to be pink insulation foam. You'll need your Worbla. But you'll also need a mask to be safe with hand sanding down your XPS foam details. It carves down very nicely, so you're going to be doing a lot of sculpting with this, as opposed to, say, cutting a clean shape in EVA foam and then just wrapping that in Worbla. There's a lot of pink dust that gets generated, so having a mask for that is very, very important. Same thing, having a pair of goggles to protect your eyes, and not only that, but goggles that wrap around your eyes entirely. Actually, friends that were around when I worked on the Canon test, I got pink insulation foam in my eye and under my contact. It like made me half blind for a few days. Definitely wear your goggles. It's bad. It's also good when you actually start cutting out your templates to have a little saw like this. I can try to find a link for it. But basically, it's a metal cutting saw that can help you cut down your starting shape out of foam really easily. You can get really close to whatever template you've written onto your foam sheets with this, as opposed to like taking an X-Acto blade or a knife or something and sawing it with that. You end up with really uneven cuts and having to clean up a lot of mess that way. This gets you really close to your starting form. After that, you'll need various types of sandpaper and likely sanding sticks. If you've watched Evil Ted's videos, you'll know how great those are. I like to start with just cutting down actually the shapes relatively with just a straight blade. Get it pretty close to what I want. And then there is just a lot of hand sanding with 60 grit. 60 grit sandpaper just rips through XPS foam, so you can get to your normal form pretty easily with that. If you want to make sure that whatever form you're ending up with, like that power pack I showed on Zarya, you can get a little sanding block like this, and that'll help you maintain your straight shapes really easily. Or the sanding stick, depending on the size of whatever piece you're doing. After that, cleaning it up with a 220. Also eats through the pink foam pretty well, but not nearly as much as the 60, and it's nice to have a good clean surface to apply the Worbla to. So, after you have that, you'll want a nice pair of scissors to cut your Worbla. Obviously, you will need a heat gun when you're actually forming your Worbla, and you'll also need a Dremel for smoothing down the seams on the Worbla. I'll show it a little bit when we get to the point of showing off the method, but basically when you sandwich the Worbla around the foam, you'll either use the scissors you use to cut out the Worbla, or some sort of straight blade, whichever works easiest depending on where you're working, to cut off the excess, and then use the Dremel to take down the rest of that seam. So I don't actually have a project in the near future where I'm planning to use pink insulation foam as a base. My next project is Genos from One Punch Man, and I plan on using just normal EVA foam on that. But I do want to remake Jekt. It was one of my first cosplays, Jekt from Final Fantasy X, and I want to remake the shoulder piece and gauntlet for that. So, really quick, for the example for this, I think I'm going to make a more simple large spike and show the wrapping on that, and then very quickly do a smaller spike here that's a little more complex and show the difference in the wrapping between the two. So the different art of Jekt it's pretty tough to actually figure out the three-dimensional shape of his wings. You can get a little bit of idea though when he goes into his crazy demonic mode, that it looks like there's an underneath that comes in here. So I wanted to make it a little more three-dimensional, and then sort of do a carve underneath. So I'm using the thicker size of foam, and I just kind of quickly sketched some garbage drawings on here, as opposed to just making a full blueprint because it is so off the cuff in the designs. So now I'll saw these out super quickly and start hand sanding from there to start getting some of the right shape around the edges, and then we'll be able to cut out our Worbla and actually do the wrapping. So now we have our base shapes to begin with. I'm going to carve these down a little closer to the final shape I want, and then I'm going to do a little bit of hand sanding, and then I'll be able to do the Worbla wrap itself. So now I have some roughly carved and sanded down to 220 grit wings. So this is going to be a wing that goes off near the top, and this is going to be a wing sort of near the bottom like that. So now all we have to do is cut out our Worbla to a shape that's roughly a little bit bigger than that, and get two of those so that we can do the sandwich method. The sandwich method, if you're not familiar, is basically to take these two pieces, have one here, heat up the Worbla and wrap it around like so, and then heat up the other side of the Worbla, wrap it around like so, and have it sandwiched together like this. So it's pretty easy to do on EVA because any heat that gets in there and touches the foam isn't really a problem with EVA. But with this, any stray heat is going to decimate your foam. So we will first, since we're doing this with XPS foam, heat up our Worbla initially. we're going to use a lot of directional heat. So I'm going to start with a more simple shape. And I'm going to get it really floppy so that first application is pretty easily done. We can get around 60%, 70% of the application done on its first pass. So as we're pressing down on this, we want to make sure that we're prioritizing getting really clean seals in this flat area here, and then pressing down cleanly along where we know the seam is going to be, because this is going to be where we're going to apply our directional heat. So the key here is you don't need much heat to get the Worbla back malleable, and the pink foam hasn't been affected by it. I ended up having a problem with the camera angle and wrapping the rest of this piece entirely off camera. So this is finished, and I did a little bit of cleanup here with the Dremel so you can see the difference on that seam cleanup. But I will just do sort of the same on the other piece here, so you can actually see the process of making the seams meet, and see that on a little bit more of a complex piece. Also, of note, I rushed this wrap here, so it's pretty messy in here, but that's all clean upable by Dremel. And then all of these places where you see pink foam, that's not the pink foam being eaten away or anything, that's me rushing and tearing the Worbla. Black Worbla tears more easily than normal Worbla. And all of that can be filled in by just taking a piece of Worbla, scrap, heating it up, and then just pressing it in there and having it join with the Worbla that's already there, and then just cleaning up the join with your Dremel. So, doing the same thing that we did on the other piece. So we have our piece nice and malleable. I like to press on the opposite side to make sure it's even with what Worbla is actually going to overhang. Pressing down into these little divots that I made. This is just to make it so that when I actually go through and do the painting on here, it looks a little more bone-like. So right now I'm just cutting the Worbla to fit the shape a little bit better. I had a lot of excess coming off of the Worbla that wraps around these spikes. That was sort of unnecessary. So now it'll fit down around these spikes a little bit better. But it's going to be a little short looking at how this is wrapping. So on the other side, when I wrap, I'm going to make sure that I come in a lot on this this internal area here, because this is barely meeting, while on the other hand I have a lot of Worbla coming over on the outside there, so I'll just need to compensate for that when I'm wrapping the other side. So I'm basically pressing the Worbla down until about the halfway point, where the other Worbla will come down and meet this first sheet, and then flipping the Worbla up so that the first sheet will be there ready to meet the second sheet, so that I can press the two pieces together. You can see I'm starting to get into very precarious areas where I'm trying to add this heat. So you have to be really careful at this point if you are doing a piece this complex and weirdly shaped, to make sure you're just using the edge of the heat cone coming out. Otherwise you're going to singe the side of your foam. But just like there, I got the Worbla here a little bit more malleable so I can press down in here without singeing this exposed foam. That was by holding the heat gun away like this. Alright, so this is a very weird shape to force the Worbla into, especially on this first side of the wrap. But we still have our foam integrity on this side, even up through all these weird edges that I was trying to get into. So now all we need to do is take this other piece of Worbla and bring it down in the same way. So some things to notice. The way that I set it down, this Worbla is coming a little bit past the halfway here and here. I'm not quite reaching on the internal side here. So I did clip away a little bit of excess here to make this wrapping a little bit easier. So that's something I'll just have to watch when I'm wrapping this on. This back part here will be really easy, but this will probably be sort of a mess to mush on and then clean up afterwards with the scissor to cut away the excess and then dremeling away any gross seams. So what I'm basically trying to do with this second part of the wrap is to bring this portion of the Worbla down to where I flipped up that first sheet of Worbla, and then just make the two meet in a 90-degree angle. So I'm basically leading the Worbla down along the foam, flipping it up, and then just making them meet like that. This side is going to be a lot easier because we don't have as much exposed foam because we've already got that one side covered and guarded. So any excess heat is going to be blocked by that other side, hopefully. And as we're bringing these seams together, we're going to do a better job when we actually heat up the seams themselves and do one final push around. But we really want to make sure the Worbla up against the foam itself is pressed really tight so that when we cut off the seams, there's no big gap between the two Worbla sheets exposing foam. Alright, so these sheets have been brought together. We're going to go around the edges one more time and then just really press the seams together and push down against the foam. And what this is doing is making it to where when you cut off this seam and then Dremel down smooth against your base, you not only don't have any pink foam exposed, but you have a really smooth, seamless Worbla area. Okay, so now that we have our sides all brought together and tight, we can trim off all of this excess and then get ready to smooth out our seams. Alright, so we have our rough shape wrapped now. There are definitely some areas in here that the sandwiching didn't come in and cover completely. When you're wrapping really complex shapes like that, that can sort of happen. All you need to do is just take a single layer of Worbla, toss it in there, heat it up. Well, heat it up first, toss it in there, then make it meet, and you're good. So, for these seams, unseemly seams, all you need to do to get them flush is get out your Dremel, rotary tool, and fire it up. But definitely make sure you have your mask and things on first. And just run your tool along that edge like this. Small circular motions work pretty well, and then you can take that seam down pretty easily. So you can run that method all the way around, and you will have your seam go from something like that to completely vanishing. So that when you do your full smooth method, your wood filler and your shellac and your filler primer and all that jazz, your seam should disappear entirely. So I've got some wing bases, and I can clean those up later, but that should be about it. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me in my first little cosplay tutorial thing. I want to start doing more of these. If you guys have any sort of questions in the process in general, things that you've been thinking about or wondering over, things that you've seen in my cosplay that you think I would be able to possibly help with, I'll definitely toss a video together or something. I'm also going to be streaming my process a little bit more, so if you think that that would be helpful at all, definitely tune in. I'll toss a link in my little description box thing. But yeah, if there's any way that I can help at all, just let me know, and more than willing to do so in whatever way I can. Thanks, guys.